Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yes, the weather is definitely going to make things a little spicy, especially with variable weather. If anybody watching would let the guys know in the chat that the streams are live. Oh, Mikey immediately on it. Thank you very much, Mikey. Let me know in the chat if I sound technologically disabled right now. Would probably be the best way to put it. Let me know if the mic sounds bad, is essentially what I'm saying. Wilson and the Aston Martin actually going pretty quick here in the wet. Vasquez seeming to have some issues. Well, very sad to see that you're not going to be racing, but depending on how turn 1 looks today, you might wish you might be glad you're not racing. The Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit here, very easy to get out on the painted tarmac and going to be quite difficult here in the wet. Depends on exactly how wet we are in the race. We'll go on board with Douglas. Watch the steering wheel. This is going to be the main thing. There is a bit of a dry line developed on the track, so it's not 100% flooded. Definitely going to have to be working the wheel, especially in the Porsche here. Touching it down into first gear for a short moment. Oh, well, it's not worth going through and saying that. While it may be true, you just gotta have higher hopes for yourself. Through the Mercedes arena. Douglas keeping it nice and tidy. The Porsche will be very tricky here at the GP circuit in the wet. The McLaren with some speed though. And this is the halfway point of this season. We are transitioned over to the GT3 cars. No more GT4s until the final round, and that's going to be GT3 for all of the top drivers, the top 10 drivers in the standings regardless of team. This is where we may see the equalizer point. A few drivers who don't have too much experience in GT4 cars transitioning over to the GT3. More popular, the more experienced of the two classes, as most everyone has lots of time behind the wheel in GT3 cars. Not everybody has the same amount of time in GT4s. That was evident throughout the 3 GT4 rounds that we just went through. Tonight will be our first GT3 round of 3 before our final round. And it is going to be a 1-hour race tonight. We have a 15-minute qualifier, which starts in about 3.5 minutes. And then we will transition over to our racing session. I believe it is a 1-hour, 1 stop. And pit stop's going to be crucial here, making sure that that stop is absolutely perfect. And also playing with the weather should we have variable weather, as we do here at the end of this practice session where the rain has stopped, the track is still wet, but there are some times where you could pit during the worst conditions, let the drivers lose time around you, and try and come in later on. Or come in earlier, let the drivers stay out throughout the worst and come out of the pit lane and have the most time in the dry. Douglas finding the grass there, and very, very slick here in the wet. And it looks like the majority of our drivers are going ahead and putting it in the pit lane. Only had a few put laps across the line. Valid ones at least. We are very close to moving into our qualifying session, which is going to be very crowded. I believe we do have around 30 drivers today, 25 currently. Breakfast pretty high up the order, immediately behind the teammate of Vasquez. Not able to run this high in the GT4s, but may be looking to turn the tides for the Mercedes team. Not necessarily turn the tides, but definitely would be a huge boost in points. If Breakfast could get up there into the top 10 with the teammates. Crater's looking for some more score for the Mercedes faction, or the McLaren faction, that is. Chasing down the 246 BMW. BMWs, the Audis, and the American team being the Chevy GT4R, the Camaro Z01 GT4R, and the Ford Mustang Dark Horse GT3. Hoping for a much better point scoring result throughout the GT3 rounds and try and recover some lost ground in the GT4 rounds. And the Ford Mustang, a very favorable car for GT3. So we could see some big points improvement for the American team. And Craters will abandon the lap, as will the majority of the field. Trotman Grant in the BMW M4 GT3 staying out for the time being. We'll bring it into this practice session. Down into the hairpin. Will be a very tricky spot, especially with all the water that pools at the bottom and the water that runs across. Same with Schumacher, the Schumacher S. A lot of water running down it, and a lot of puddles in the apexes, and just throughout quite a few of these corners with the amount of camber that they have. I can tell you love the rain races up in P5 currently. Rain, as I always say, the great equalizer. In both good and bad ways. Some drivers very, very quick in the rain compared to the dry. Other drivers may get involved in incidents that in the dry would only be a minor loss of time that end up being a great loss of time in the wet. And that is going to bring it into free practice. Don't look at the pace car too closely. We are now in qualifying with rain, and it is going to be rainy. Douglas, the first one out of the pit lane. And times where you would like to be the first car out of the pit lane in qualifying. It's good to get out there for the track position and at least get a clean lap in. Something to watch out for here big time. It's going to be that you do need cars on track to displace that moisture and give you a nice racing line to run off of. It is going to take a few laps for that line to form. And until then, the track is going to be a bit flooded, will be a bit loose. Now Douglas may be at least in a better position than those who are coming out right now, but it is just going to be their out lap. Will take a couple laps for the track to get to its peak wet running. No rubber levels to worry about. Just need to make sure that the water gets displaced on track enough that you have grip with these wet grooved tires. Coming up through Advan, Douglas with a large gap to the next car behind, but still not really going to be in a great position for a quick qualifying lap on this first lap, but still has that nice track position as long as no one comes out of the pit lane directly ahead. Should be just fine to bring home a nice result. For the first qualifying lap, still waiting to see some of that water displaced. It's a little bit displaced and the rain is diminishing a bit. It will pick up by the halfway point of qualifying. But for now, we just sit and watch. Douglas in the Porsche will be the first to set a flying lap, granted that he stays valid to the line. And the Porsche's desperately in need of some points to catch up to the McLarens and the Mercedes. And Mercedes have been dominant in the GT4, but now into the GT3, the field is equalized a bit. The Porsches have been right there with the rest of the field, but have just been playing third string compared to the Mercedes and the McLaren. Some wins for Porsche tonight, or just a more concentrated, higher scoring finish for the team, would be able to put them closer to competition with the McLarens and the Mercedes. Actually is Porsche in second, just ahead of the McLarens. Actually just ahead of the Aston Martins. The Aston Martins found their way up into third with the McLarens in fourth. A very, very close fight between the Porsche, Aston Martin, and McLaren teams. All separated by 40 points from P2 to P4 in the championship. The Mercedes team does have about 1,200 points. So large gap for the rest of the field to try and close, but it makes things all more crucial for the Mercedes team. Not quite as strong of a GT3 car compared to their GT4, as we do have times coming across the line. Wilson in the Aston Martin goes fastest to a 5.225, the time to beat for our GT3 field tonight. Douglas down to P2. No Mercedes at the top. Vasquez able to put one lap in, but not able to get up there into the top 10 just yet. Eggy in the Mercedes is P9. Winter pulls up alongside the teammate, goes third fastest, right behind Douglas. Horner in the McLaren, P4. Fernandez in the BMW with a very good qualifying so far for the BMW, P5. But a large gap to fill, and we likely will see that gap filled. 3/4 of a second. Bird hops into that gap, knocks Horner down to P4. That's two Aston Martins in the front two rows alongside two Porsches. But I think we will see some Mercedes join in to disrupt that party. Off the track for Wilson. And I believe that is going to be back to the pit lane. Pretty much everyone has qualified. We do have the Audis who are looking for another good result tonight after they got some top 10 finishes the week prior at Paul Ricard. Boiling, the front runner for the Audi team, could be looking at a win very, very quick, but we'll have to see how he is able to handle the Audi R8 GT3 Evo here at the Nurburgring. Douglas 204.610, now the time to beat. Vasquez in the Mercedes is right behind, bowing out of this lap, going back to the pit lane for a fresh set of tires and a new load of qualifying fuel, which is not going to be much fuel. Craters in the McLaren up to P3. Wilson knocked it down to P4. Winter down to P5. Wagner in the Porsche. It's three Porsche in the top 10 with the highest concentration of manufacturer in the top 10. Now we still have a few drivers. I believe we are not going to see Elizondo today. At least I don't see Elizondo on the roster, which will be very crucial for the Mercedes team. It has been a two-man show for the Mercedes, sorry, not the McLaren, for the Mercedes. It has been a two-man show for the Mercedes team. And Elizondo, currently our championship leader. While there are drop rounds and Elizondo may choose this to be his drop round for his overall championship. Don't want to risk a good result, potentially good result for the team. Now there are some drop rounds accounted for, so for teams that have a bad night here tonight, they will have this round dropped, as the rain will be picking up as the session continues. So likely we are going to see our fastest laps here very soon, as Douglas will abandon this lap. Horner with a 2:04.412 for the McLaren team. And thank you, S-Man. We have now reached 450 followers. So thank you for being Mr. 450. And out onto the painted tarmac will be very dangerous for our drivers in the race tonight. And another thing to look at, there is a lot of running water at the belly of turn 1. Will be very crucial for our drivers at the start of this race to be mindful of that puddle there in turn 1. Trying to desperately warm up the tires is Douglas, but I think it's going to be too little too late. Will be hard to pull a faster lap with increasing rain as the track gets more wet. It's going to be a lot harder to get that crucial grip. Still have a little over 4 minutes left in this qualifying session, and now, at least for Douglas here in the Porsche and the 68 Audi of boiling behind, grip seems to be even more lacking. Well, we are going to have a 1-hour race tonight. I believe we do have pit stops in order. Hold on, S-Man, I am sending you a message on Discord. Go ahead and check that channel out, and if you would like to be here racing next week, you can. You can join the TRC Discord. You can join my personal Discord. The TRC Discord will also pop up in the Twitch chat, but through my personal Discord, you can join the TRC Discord and get involved with the races that way. Signups are on SimGrid. This is the TRC Brands Baddies Championship. We are in the halfway point of this season, so if you would like to join in, there may be room on some teams. You will just have to communicate with the team managers and see who has room and what car you would be able to drive. Vasquez goes fastest at 2:04.398, and you're going to have to say that I'm wrong because times have dropped. Wilson at now 9 thousandths of a second off of Vasquez. Horner only 14 thousandths of a second off of Vasquez on pole. And Vasquez, with no teammate at the top, is going to have some work to do. It has been the dynamic duo of Vasquez and Elizondo getting it done for the Mercedes team. And without a teammate at the front, could be hard for Vasquez to bring home the victory for the Mercedes, but not impossible. Vasquez, a very, very seasoned driver here with TRC. Vasquez goes even quicker, 203.273. And I really thought we were going to be pushing the limits of our times in this qualifying session. But Vasquez drops us way down the order, 203.2, showing some serious pace in the Mercedes. Is there going to be anyone who will be able to contest that time? This is going to be the final lap of qualifying. We've got a few drivers that will just now be coming across the line to finish their qualifying. Miller may be able to get another lap in here, but it will be very, very close. Miller will get another lap. Currently P18 looking for some improvement. Atwell not going to get another lap. The 555 of Mott across the line. That will bring it into their qualifying at P20. Trotman Grant and the BMW across the line looking for some improvement. Doesn't get it. The 99 of Wagner looking for improvement. P5 stays P5. The 23 of Young in the Mercedes across the line. Currently P15 stays P15. The number 19 of Franklin across the line goes up to P22. The number 32 of Douglas looking to challenge for that pole position. Gets on the front row, but still a second off the pace of the Mercedes. 16 of Mikey in the Aston Martin looking for improvement. Currently P6, knocks Wagner down to P5. The 777 of Vasquez looking for even more improvement. We'll see if he finds it. Does not. Stays P1 for the time being. Harvey coming in for a pit stop practice, and Horner in the number 915 McLaren all the way out on the track limits looking for an improvement. Does not get it. Stays P4. Bird in the Aston Martin will be next across the line. Bird very, very quick, but we'll see if he can find 2 seconds. So that's what it's going to take this pole position away. Out of the final corner and across the line, what'll it be for Bird? Currently P9. It's good enough for P2, found a second, 1.2, but not enough to take that pole position away. And Eggy in the Mercedes goes P19. That is going to bring an end to the qualifying session. Trotman Grant is still out, but I don't think that he is on a valid lap, but the session is not saying that it's over yet, so this may still be a valid lap, and we'll see if Trotman Grant finds an improvement. It is not going to be a valid lap. Aside from what I kind of expected, Mercedes back on pole. And it is Vasquez P1 with a 203.273, Bird P2, Douglas P3, Wilson P4, Horner P5, Mikey P6, Wagner P7, Craters P8, Winter P9, Breakfast P10, Greathouse P11, Fernandez P12, Norman P13, Boiling P14, Drain P15, Harvey P17, or Young P16, Harvey P17, Atwell P18, Miller P19, Eggy P20, Mott P21, Merkel P22, Franklin P23, Trotman Grant P24, Granados P25, Caligari P26, and Bahena with a late join in P27. It's Mercedes back on pole. We'll see if it stays that way As while Vasquez, a very, very quick driver, is definitely not the luckiest driver. And we're going to start off with a flooded track. It is an absolute downpour. Now that downpour may be cold by the time we come around for the start of the formation lap, but the track is definitely going to be flooded. It will be a very chaotic start. And things are going to look very, very interesting for turn 1. We're also 3 subscriptions away from my goal of 25, which would be absolutely awesome. So if you guys would like to contribute to the subscriber goal, you can do so with a regular Twitch subscription, or the way I'd prefer you to do it is with a Twitch Prime subscription, which doesn't cost you anything if you have an Amazon Prime subscription. And if you don't use it, it's free money that you just give back to Mr. Jeff Bezos. I do not believe that we are going to have required pit stops tonight, but it is definitely going to be an interesting race. We are trying to emulate snow because it is very, very cold here in Germany currently as we replicate the true forecast of the track. Don't have any required pit stops, and these wet tires are going to be able to go the distance today, so long as we don't go dry. Should we go dry, then we are likely going to have some tire swaps for slick tires, but I don't think, with the way things look right now, that we are going to be dry at all. And the race is definitely going to start out flooded. This is going to be quite the race start. Now everybody does have traction control. It will be very crucial for the drivers to keep the steering wheel pointed straight whenever they punch the throttle at the green flag. And going down into turn number 1, trying to go 2 wide or 3 wide is not really going to be the thing that you're going to want to do, as it will be a fight for survival on the first few laps. I'd say the first lap, but it's going to be the first few laps as the track currently flooded. That doesn't immediately go away. It's going to take a bit of displacing some of that water and hoping that the rain calms down a bit, which the rain will calm down. It will not be this downpour that we currently have whenever we come across the line. Vasquez will lead us off the line. And I can tell you, everyone on this grid is going to hope that we displace as much water as possible before we get going with the green flag. Now the puddle down in the belly of turn 1, especially with cold tires. Again, the track is 11 degrees Celsius. 11 degrees Celsius ambient. The track temperature is 13 degrees Celsius, but it is still very cold and raining, which means the tires are going to have a lot of trouble gaining temperature. The drivers will do everything they can at the start of this race and on this formation lap to warm up those tires, warm up those brakes. I can assure you the brake ducts are likely going to be all the way closed to try and conserve whatever temperature they can generate. And a lot of time has been spent at the drawing board trying to get these setups correct for these very difficult conditions. Very unique conditions as well, but with TRC we like our crazy races every now and then, and this is going to be one of those. 1 hour here around the Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit. No stops required, and a set of wet tires will go the distance here in the rain. It's just up to the drivers to keep the car itself, keep all the body panels connected. And while I'd like to say we are not going to see chaos, the likelihood of a turn 1 bowling alley pulling off the the Valtteri Bottas 2020, I believe that was 2021 or 2022, but the Valtteri Bottas bowling at Nurburgring could be replicated here in turn 1 of the Nurburgring. It is just going to, we'll have to see how it goes. There is a bit of sportsmanship with the TRC crew, and it's a mix of manufacturers at the top, but it is highly concentrated. Aston Martin and Porsche in the top 10. 3 Porsche in the top 10, 3 Aston Martin in the top 10. And as we have seen with the Mercedes teammates, Vasquez now up front all on his lonesome. He does have one teammate in the top 10, that is Breakfast, which is number 10. But teamwork goes a long way in this series. If you're new to this series, all of the manufacturers are on teams together. They are competing for an individual overall championship, but all of our drivers in the same car are on the same team fighting for that team championship, the manufacturer championship. We are about to get ready. Vasquez leads the field as they form up behind. And we are about to take the green flag to start off this chaotic race. Green, green, green. The first round of the GT3 cars here with the TRC Brands Baddies Championship. And watching them careen down towards turn number 1. Everyone behind as the bowling does start. It's not too bad. Who is that in the Mustang that almost went around? We've had another incident at the exit of the arena, I believe. No, we have not. We do have more drivers that are still stuck and trying to get out. Merkel being one of those stuck in the sand trap. Someone gets a 30-second stop and go penalty. I'm not exactly sure why. It just said from race control. Who is it that got that 30-second stop and go? It's Granados at the back of the field. I wonder if that was for corner cutting, but I'm not sure. Vasquez finds an early break. And the Aston Martins have fallen back a bit. Did we have someone in the sand? Yes, we do. Who is that? That is the BMW of Fernandez in the sand at the hairpin. Eventually did rejoin. And who is that off? Is that our race leader of Vasquez? Yes, it is. I think there was a touch at the rear. 12 Aston Martin of Norman goes around at the Schumacher S as well, and it is absolute chaos all over the field. We've got drivers off left and right. Vasquez now from the lead finds himself well into the midst of the pack. 246 of Trotman Grant still stuck at the Schumacher S. There is absolutely no grip out there. The track is flooded. And it's Horner in the McLaren that will lead the first lap. And the Porsches able to stretch their legs as well. Mikey in the Aston Martin not as lucky as the teammate. Eggy in the Mercedes off and trying to rejoin. Miller. It's actually not Miller, that is Merkel in the Mustang, as there is a lot of damage all over the place. Merkel in the Mustang, Eggy in the Mercedes. We have had drivers come into the pit lane. Mott around at turn 1 trying to rejoin. The track is still flooded. There is still no grip out there. And while we do race in these conditions with sim racing, if this were a real race, this would have been red flagged long ago. Not even with contact, just with the conditions, the racing conditions that we have here on the track. Trying to find a few cars to stay with, but there are just individual incidents happening all around. this is going to majorly shake up the championship standings should we stay like this. Norman again around at the Mercedes arena trying to get it righted and back onto the racing surface. Bahena in the pit lane with damage, Drain in the pit lane with damage, Granados in the pit lane, and Craters in the pit lane. Multiple top contenders for their respective team essentially out of the race early, as Horner sliding through Bielstein curve, just trying to keep that McLaren planted long enough for some water to be displaced. More trouble for Vasquez, off again at Schumacher and dropping down the order. That Mercedes is just having issues, and this is not good for the Mercedes team. As I believe that was Mott going for a slide behind. No, it was not. That was the number 914 of Eggy. And issues for the Mercedes, issues for the Porsche of Winter as well, going off. I think went straight on through the chicane as Mikey and the Aston Martin goes around and past. It's looking to be a good run for the Aston Martin so far, as they are currently the top scoring team out in the field. I think Winter almost went a bit too deep into turn one there. We are now about to have some battles for position, as the track is at least no longer deemed flooded. And we should finally see our drivers getting a bit of grip. The rain is going to be lessening here, but we don't have a very long forecast. It's going to be kind of playing off the seat of your pants. And depending on the gamble with that forecast, should we go dry, do you come in and put slick tires on, or do you just try and wait the wet tires out as long as possible? We may see a lot of gambling in the pit lane if we go dry. With the cloud cover and the drizzle, it is going to keep us wet for the time being. And the spray, I can only imagine that the spray is immense. We go on board with Wilson in the Aston Martin, and very ginger on the throttle through the Schumacher S. Still can't see much, but does have a teammate of Mikey behind trying to get another position for the Aston Martin team, away from the Mercedes of Breakfast up ahead. Currently the top scoring Mercedes. The Mercedes seeming to have some trouble here in these very wet conditions. We'll go back with Miller, as I believe there have been a few drivers queuing up behind. Granado's having issues at turn one as our leaders closing on by, and who is that in the Mercedes sliding out? Just a pure lack of grip in the front from the Mercedes, and a dive bomb from Franklin into the chicane. Mott behind will try and follow Franklin through and go past the teammate. Bird in the Aston Martin now has company in the form of the Porsche of Wagner and the Mercedes of Breakfast Wilson, also in that group as well. And I think Mikey trailing at the back of this pack. Winter has actually now found himself in this group, as we've got, I believe, 6 or 7 cars involved, all in this battle, queuing up behind Bird. So we will have pockets of cars at all sorts of different pace. Different skill level, different pace. And looking at that forecast, as the rain was going down, the rain is actually going to continue to increase. So we do have a short period of drizzle, but the rain will be back. That doesn't mean that we won't see those flooded conditions again. Breakfast almost making a big mistake on the exit curve of the hairpin. Now coming up into Schumacher. The Mercedes just seems to be dealing with a copious amount of understeer And the Aston Martin's actually a bit of oversteer coming through Schumacher, as we saw some counter steer from both Wilson and Mikey, trying to keep the front end point of the track still very, very slick. A lot of water, and it is going to take a while to displace that moisture. Let's go on board with Mikey. There is not much to see. That spray, especially as you get closer and closer, gets a lot worse. And all three of these drivers going wide. Breakfast goes very wide. Mikey will come on the inside of the teammate. And these team passes are going to try and be done as best as possible to limit the amount of time loss for the teammates. The number 914 of Eggy off again at the Ravenel curve. And it has just been absolute chaos. Now, drivers finally starting to get a rhythm set, but it is still going to be a while before everybody gets into their respective positions on pace, as we have the field actually quite mixed up. And as faster drivers go to move through those who may not be quite as fast, that's when we may get a bit of entanglement, as the number 700 of Greyhouse almost went off in the Audi in the Mercedes arena. It looked like we had someone with an off there for just a moment, but I believe not. And this is a development here. Porsche of Wagner making it past both Mikey and Wilson, right behind Breakfast now. Winter in the back of that pack also trying to get involved. Wagner goes very wide onto the painted tarmac, and there is absolutely no grip out there. Side by side, door to door here in the wet, in the rain, around Bielstein, and now the two teammates, the Aston Martins behind, try and negotiate their position, but Mikey goes off into the sand. I think that will allow Wilson to go on past. Mikey will play defense and not allow the Porsche of Winter to go on through. Almost a slide for Mikey, but managed to hold on to it. And it is all sorts of chaos. Our pole sitter with another off. And a sitting duck in the middle of the track there. And who else is involved in that? There was another car involved. And that is a broken wing, I believe, for the Mercedes of Vasquez. And terrible luck for the Mercedes driver, one of the top Mercedes drivers. That's going to be an entry into the pit lane. Vasquez, if you are listening, you have a broken wing. Don't try to push it into the pit lane. But you do need to come in. You can't stay out. You do need to come in. There you go. For those of you drivers out there who may not turn the streams on during the race, I do try to help you a little bit, or try to help the ones that do. So it may be a bit of an incentive to get the stream turned on and be listening during the race. I will also give weather updates. Winter with an off at the Ford curve or Castrol curve, one of the two. And who was that with an off? The number 97 of Merkel. That puddle at turn one, taking yet another victim. And Eggy in the Mercedes off at the arena needs to try and get it turned around, but a group of cars coming by is not going to make that very easy. And we've also got a McLaren off, that is the 79 of Caligari, as this weather definitely proving difficult for many drivers. And it's only going to get worse because the rain will continue to increase. We've actually had pretty mellow periods of rain for the time being. And now the rain is going to be getting even more. It looked there for a moment that Horner may have had a broken wing, but I think He does not. I think it was just the angle of the camera there. And all on his own at the front, which is exactly where you want to be with a team like this, with conditions like this. It would be very privy for Horner to have some more McLaren teammates up into the top 10. But as I said before, rain the great equalizer, and we have absolutely seen that today. E700 at Great House with yet another off at the chicane, and looked like there's a bit of a slip from the Porsche through the Mercedes arena. It is the 700 in trouble. I think finally got it rejoined. The 915 of Horner, what has happened? As Douglas is up in front, was it an off from Horner by himself? I believe it may have been. No one is safe, and Douglas in the Porsche finds himself in the lead, but it seems to be that that lead is cursed. The number 913 of Craters around at the curves. Horner now has to try and catch back up to the teammates. The 97 of Merkel with another off at turn 1. The 246 of Trotman Grant also involved in that. The 79 of Caligari making it past those two. This is a torrential downpour, and it has not allowed the track to develop any sort of dry line. Wagner in the Porsche with two hungry Aston Martins, looking to take some positions and get up there with the teammate. And it is 4 Aston Martins in the top 10 now, as they seem to be handling this inclement weather very handily. And the rain is going to continue to increase as we may see the downpour again. And those very, very treacherous flooded conditions should we get another tremendous downpour. But now, Douglas in the position that Horner was in earlier, all on his own and at the front. Wagner now has to try and defend the positions and the points scoring positions for the Porsche team, as Wagner does not want to let one or either of these Aston Martins through for position, as Porsche's looking to secure their second place in the championship, and with their second place and a poor running from the Mercedes, would be able to maybe close the gap and score big points, as this could have major championship implications here tonight. It's still the Porsche of Douglas out in front, but got to keep tabs on him because no one is safe, as we have seen mistakes from especially our top drivers. And Horner around at Schumacher has an opening in the track, but that's going to drop the McLaren team down even further. And that bumps all of the Aston Martin drivers up a touch. Bird now promoted to P2 with Breakfast in P3 now. Breakfast does hold the fastest lap of the race. Douglas just trying to keep his nose clean, now has a 10-second lead to P2. Wilson made it past Wagner. The Aston Martin teammate of Mikey will try and do the same. And a big slide from the Porsche, as we are now going to have a drag race. Mikey will have the inside into turn number 1. See how this one plays out. The braking games played as Wagner goes very, very wide onto the outside curb. Very dangerous to do, but is going to concede the position to the Aston Martin of Mikey, and now down 2 positions is the Porsche of Wagner. But But Mikey makes a slight mistake, opens the door back up for the Porsche as the inside for the exit of the arena. But the Porsche gets a much better run and may have the inside at Castrol Curve, but does not take the opportunity. The 913 of Craters backwards at the final corner, and the Mercedes of Young in P14 with a bit of trouble as well. I believe that is going to be a retirement from Craters. Just going to wipe the slate clean on this one as the 914 of Eggy and the Mercedes pirouetting in front of our race leader. That's a bit of a clincher right there. Makes you grab onto the steering wheel just a little bit harder. The rain is continuing to increase. We may very well see flooded conditions again. Fernandez in the BMW around again, trying to get it righted. And Vasquez took the fastest lap of the race back. Breakfast trying to take the second place position away from Bird now. And hard braking into the chicane, goes too deep. Now where are the two Aston Martins behind? Is it going to be enough to allow the Aston Martins to be in second, third, and fourth place? It's not going to be close enough for them yet. It's 914 of Eggy. It is a very poor day for the Mercedes. The Porsche trying to capitalize, currently in the lead and have two other drivers in the top 10, but it's going to be the Aston Martins, at least for the time being. If the race was scored today, or if the race was scored right now, it is 4 Aston Martin drivers in the top 10. 40% of the top 10 drivers in Aston Martins, which would be a phenomenal points weekend for the Aston Martins. 700 of Great House off at Schumacher and back to the pit lane. Things have finally started to calm down at least a little bit, but the rain is going to continue to increase, and we may see the torrential downpour yet again as Mikey, actually not Mikey, Wilson makes a mistake at the hairpin, allows Mikey, the teammate, to go on through. And Wagner in the Porsche being dropped ever so slowly. Yes, it does seem like the Aston Martins are having a very good time. But the Porsche, at least in the hands of Douglas, was not able to put it on pole, was good enough for P2. Actually, I believe it was Bird that was good enough for P2. But the Porsche, at least of Douglas, allowing the race to come to him. And this would be a very good point scoring race should he be able to take home the win, at least for the individual championship. Bird in P2, and Mikey now all over the rear of the Mercedes of Breakfast. Breakfast takes the fastest lap back, but Mikey, for the first time in Aston Martin, with the fastest lap of the race. And will we see the late lunge from Mikey? No, we will not. Mikey also playing a bit of defense for the team, as Bird in the Aston Martin is slowly becoming under pressure from the Mercedes. Not even slowly, very quickly coming under pressure. And the last thing that Mikey needs here is an incident between those two at the front. And if Mikey would be able to get past the Mercedes of Breakfast and play defense for Bird a little bit, then allow Wilson to move forward as well, could be some very good teamwork for some very good points for the Aston Martin camp. We still have to get there though, as we have 37 minutes left in this race. There has been a lot of carnage, a lot of chaos. Mikey is staying to the inside, as no, Bird makes the same mistake that Mikey did. That actually promotes Breakfast up into P2. And at least the Aston Martins are 1, 2, 3, one behind the other. That's not going to be the way that they had intended for that to go. Now Mikey has to work on a Mercedes at breakfast that now has clean air up ahead, and it does seem to be very, very quick, throwing up the fastest lap of the race momentarily until Mikey ended up taking that back. Now we've got a battle here up into the chicane. You need to be very careful with the overtakes here in the rain. You have to kind of plan your move a bit differently. Mikey, I think, had some early rotation in the Aston Martin and ended up having to cut through the chicane. Don't want to get a 30-second stop and go for track limits, or even a drive-through penalty for track limits. Mikey, once again, trying to size up this move to get P2 away from breakfast, flashing the lights into the braking zone. Try and play a bit of mind games. This is the battle for 2 spots on the podium. The 913 of Craters, and no, he didn't go around. I think he was just slowing and letting the leaders go on by. That almost looked like a mistake from breakfast, but just a very, very tight line exiting the Mercedes arena. And it is Douglas with clean air and no issues, able to pull away and extend the lead. Now upwards of 14 seconds, encroaching on a 15-second lead. As things finally start to quiet down until we get another downpour. Trouble in the Aston Martin camp is they have an intruder. As Wilson goes off straight on through the Schumacher S, and Wagner had a big save coming out of the S. Wilson is going to lose 2 positions to Wagner and Horner. Horner, who at one point did lead this race, led quite a few of the opening laps, and that torrential downpour is back on the books. We are going to see flooded conditions again, and I can assure you that is not a welcome sight to these drivers in Bahena off at the Mercedes arena. But we are going to see flooded conditions again, and as I said, not a welcome sight for these drivers. And that is the equalizer, that is the great big equalizer, as those flooded conditions are going to make it very, very treacherous, even more so than it already is. We have a few drivers that are struggling with these wet conditions as they stand, and they are about to get worse in about 5 minutes' time. See if Douglas and the Porsche are able to weather the storm, quite literally, as it is about to be rough waters as our drivers are sailing. Not so much driving, but sailing here around the Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit. Might as well wish you went for a Bentley in this race. You'd much rather have a boat than a sports car. And almost another mistake from Horner, as that rain, the increasing rain, is starting to become a bit of an issue. And Wilson right back in this fight. And Wagner makes a mistake too deep into the hairpin, allows Wilson to regain one of those positions lost in the past couple laps. Now this time much more careful through the Schumacher S, trying to close back up on the McLaren of Horner. Horner almost making a mistake onto the painted tarmac and suffering with a bit more over rotation. And very, very brave, these drivers going on to the outside curbs. Mikey once again trying to take P2 away from Breakfast this time. Mikey gets a good run out of the final corner. A bit of a slide from the Mercedes. Is it going to open the door for Mikey and the Aston Martin? Breakfast not entirely defensive, flashing the lights down the straight. As Mikey does pull over to the inside, goes very deep to the inside, but not close enough on the brakes. Tries to force Breakfast to go a bit more defensive on the brakes. And now the opportunity may arise for Mikey into the second part of the Mercedes arena. Breakfast has a bit of a slide, and it plays directly into his hand. Mikey saw the slide, got on the brakes, and killed all forward momentum in this fight. Now Breakfast able to open a gap slightly. And that torrential downpour is going to last a while, at least 5 minutes. And it is still coming. It is going to get a lot more hairy, just like it was at the beginning of this race, but we weren't racing during the torrential downpour. Now we are going to be here in a couple minutes' time. It's about to get a lot more dangerous. The gap has stabilized between Douglas and the crew chasing behind. Has not grown to 14 seconds yet. The 97 of Merkel off at Bielstein again. The 914 of Eggy off at the turn 1 sand trap. And still just trying to hold on to the positions that they have. And now going to be driving these cars more than racing these cars. As it's about to get a lot harder. Mikey got the move on Breakfast. There is some traffic. That is the 97 of Merkel pulling that Mustang GT3 into the pit lane. And do we think that Douglas wins this race? Quite literally has to weather the storm up at the front by himself and deal with traffic in 2 minutes' time, as the rain is about to get even worse. It's about to be essentially a double torrential downpour. It's already raining hard. It has been raining hard, and it is about to get flooded again. We'll see if we are able to keep it locked down, as it's going to get very hard to drive these cars once again. Bird back onto the rear of Breakfast. Not completely out of that fight, and still trying to score some good points for the Aston Martin crew. There is that water starting to rear its ugly head, as almost all three of those drivers went deep into turn 3. They've kind of gotten used to the conditions that we have now, but once again, they are going to get thrown the Hail Mary here with that downpour, which is looking to stay quite some time. We'll see if Breakfast is able to keep it up there. Already starting to deal with more of that understeer that we saw Vasquez lose the lead of the race with in the Mercedes. And understeer for the Mercedes about to become a much bigger issue. Douglas making it past the number 18 of Bahena, as we have had a couple retirements and a few drivers still in the pit lane. Vasquez running right behind the BMW of Trotman Grant, who's actually going defensive because this is a battle for position. We've got more drivers off the 913 of Craters, the 914 of Eggy. And again, it's about to get wet. It's already wet, but it's about to get wetter. At least that torrential downpour is only going to last, I'd say, about 10 minutes. but it is going to rain. It actually has now just started raining harder. We'll see how this affects our battles for position. Mikey able to break free of Breakfast just a bit. Bird trying to catch up to Breakfast, coming into turn 4 though. Actually, that would be turn 5. Get a bit confused between the Nordschleife turns and the GP turns. It actually has been quite some time since I've commentated a race here with the GP circuit. I'm used to us taking a left at the final hairpin. We'll see how Douglas is faring in these conditions. It's not flooded yet, but it will touch flooded for just a moment. Again, it is going to get a lot harder to drive. Just a bit. Horner with Bird now behind. Horner has made it past Bird. And the rain will be weaning off in 7 minutes, but we do have to deal with the downpour for now. Both Bird and Wilson, the two Aston Martin teammates, don't want to take each other out, but want to try and help each other as much as possible to make it past the iron of Horner. If they are able to do so, Aston Martins now occupy 4 spots of the top 9, and Porsche with 3 spots of the top 8. Breakfast still a very high-scoring Mercedes. As it is absolutely pouring. Still not flooded track, but it is less grip out there than there was a couple laps ago. Those windshield wipers and wet tires absolutely getting their use in, because this is going to be the first time this season I believe we've had inclement weather. The 47 of Miller off at Bielstein Curve. Did have someone with a bit of a lag there, but ultimately no issue. This race has been pure survival. We have had a bit of racing, but aside from that, it has just been survival. No one is safe, even our leaders. We've had 2 leaders lose the lead, all on their own from issues. Vasquez, I'm not 100% sure. I did see some damage on the rear, but he may have gone backwards into the wall. Breakfast still trying to chase down the Aston Martin of Mikey up ahead, but has Horner in the Mercedes, who has clawed his way back up into P4. And that's not what Breakfast wanted. A great run for Breakfast may end up in shambles. He's going to be able to re-enter the circuit. Made contact with the BMW of Fernandez and is going to drop down to P5. Off of the podium, was in a great points scoring position, his best of the season so far. That has now gone away. Still plenty of time to catch right back up, as the rain will be weaning off a bit. A bit of miscommunication, misinterpretation of traffic there. It happens, now just has to recollect and continue to press forward. Bird with a bit of damage on the side of that Aston Martin. Actually, I think it's just dirty. She needs a wash, Bird. Quite a bit of rubber buildup. Miller, the 47 Ford Mustang, into the pit lane, as we have quite a few drivers in the pit lane. The 914 of Eggy, the 555 of Mott, 913 of Craters, and the 700 of Great House. Not a good day for the Mercedes so far. Breakfast was the light at the end of the tunnel for the Mercedes team, who would have kept them on podium. This may be the first race this season where we do not have a Mercedes on podium. Breakfast now trying to pull away from the Porsche of Wagner. Breakfast very, very quick in the Aston Martin here. Held the fastest lap for a bit. Very quick in the Mercedes. Just a bad stroke of luck. But he's got the pace to get the positions back, running down the Aston Martin of Wilson. May be able to claw his way back into the podium positions, as there's still plenty of fighting that can go on ahead, and especially fighting in these, well, I'd say more adverse conditions. It's a big slide for Breakfast through turn 2. But with these conditions, a small battle can greatly lose a lot of time, and he's just got to hope that Mikey and Horner and Wilson start to battle up ahead. And that would close that fight right back up. Atwell. P9 in the Aston Martin is bringing up the rear for the top 10 of the team. Does have the teammate of Norman a good ways back, but I would say that the Aston Martins, at least overall, are the top scoring team of the day. They're not in the lead, but they have 5 cars in the top 18, or 6 cars in the top 18. The whole team is in the top 18. They have 5 of their 6 cars in the top 13 and 4 of their 6 cars in the top 10. That's the best statistics from this race of any of the manufacturers today. And I will go to someone else, Atwell, because I believe I have cursed you a little bit there as you made a mistake on stream. Wagner now under attack from Bird in the Aston Martin. As Bird wants to get more points for the Aston Martin team. Breakfast slowly catching the Aston Martin of Wilson up ahead. Big slide from the Porsche. 18 of, I believe that is Bahena. Off again at the Ad Van Kink. Wagner and Bird here in a battle for position. I believe this is one of our only direct battles for position at this time being. Caligari and Granados also in a fight. For P17, 2 rookies of Trotman Grant and Caligari. Actually, not Trotman, this is Caligari and Granados. Granados trying to close up on the rear of the McLaren, number 79 McLaren. Does have a bit of a slide and goes narrow. Throttle application, very crucial here as Caligari goes around. That's going to make that an easy battle for Granados. And now Caligari will have to get it turned back around and back onto the racing surface. Bird still applying pressure to Wagner. Wagner going very, very wide, trying to use the extent of the track limits. Dangerous here in the wet. A bit of a slide through Bielstein. See if Bird is able to take advantage. The rain weaning off a bit now. We may see drizzling rain and possibly rain ending as Wagner goes very deep through the chicane, but carries a lot of speed in doing so. Bird driving a bit safer behind. I think Wagner really trying to push some time out of the car and both hold Bird at bay and try and close the gap to Breakfast up ahead. Breakfast now closing in on Wilson as Breakfast is right behind. This could easily be a battle for position. It's Breakfast very quick in the Mercedes. Would be one spot off of the podium. Doesn't mean that it's impossible for him. Has Breakfast? No, Breakfast has had an off at the Mercedes arena again. Trying to get it righted. He's actually going to fall back down to P8. And just some issues trying to find grip, as there is absolutely no grip out there. At least there is a large buffer, but that is going to take away the chances of a Mercedes podium for Breakfast there. Absolutely heartbroken for him, as he was having a great race today. Amazing pace, just the conditions, the Mercedes not taking well to the conditions whatsoever. Wagner opening a gap to Bird slightly. So everyone has kind of started to run a bit of a pace of their own. Very far venturing out onto the painted tarmac for Wagner. Dangerous game to play here in these wet conditions. As there is no grip out there. Less grip than you would have on the tarmac. The tarmac or asphalt, whatever the track is poured in, is at least going to be, as Horner makes a mistake, that's going to drop a McLaren in this battle between Wagner and Bird. And that promotes Wilson back up into the podium, as we have two Aston Martins and a Porsche on the podium. No McLaren and no Mercedes on the podium, which is a bit uncharacteristic of this season so far, but did say leading up into this, as Horner has had another off at turn 1. That's going to demote him all the way back to P7, right in front of Breakfast. And that may make things a bit more dire for Bird, as the gap has opened up quite a bit, I think, in avoidance. Actually, Wagner has dropped back. I think that was a bit of avoidance. Wagner now back behind the teammate of Winter. And Bird, when he comes across the timing line, is going to be scored P4. It's the result that Aston Martin wanted. P2, 3, 4. All in a row for the Aston Martins, and they've only got 12 minutes left with favoring conditions, as the rain will continue to diminish, at least for the foreseeable future. And as long as they don't make any mistakes, it's going to be as good of a points finish for the Aston Martins as they've had all season. Have I said it enough tonight that there will be major championship implications tonight? No McLarens on the podium, no McLarens in the top 5, absolutely dominated by 3 Porsche and 3 Aston Martin in the top 6. Horner, the top scoring McLaren in P7, Breakfast, the top scoring Mercedes in P8, and Harvey, the top scoring of the American team in P9, the Ford Mustang and Camaro GT4 team. Fernandez, the top scoring BMW in P11. While there are going to be some drop races for the teams, Has Wilson had a bit of a mistake? I don't think so, but definitely does not want to risk a mistake, as that would kind of throw a wrench in the points that the team has accumulated now. Douglas out front has been able to weather the storm, just has a bit more to go as we close in on 10 minutes left in this race. Been able to drive safe, no one to really race, no one in battle to lose time to, aside from a few traffic cars that will come up periodically as he sorts his way through the back markers. Easy runnings once the race was essentially handed to him after Vasquez came around and Horner came around, both relinquishing the lead respectively. Douglas said, "Oh, okay, I'll take that," and has not faltered since. Sometimes you just have to let the race come to you, and as of right now, that is exactly how it has gone for Douglas. Mikey taking the fastest lap. Wilson in P2, Bird in P3. Bird does have company. He has put a traffic car, a back marker with number 97 of Merkel in between himself and Winter. A bit of defense played there. But the rain, as I have said, would be the equalizer. Has been the equalizer. And Porsche, I believe, would be looking for their first win this season, as it has been dominated by Mercedes and McLaren. Wouldn't be the first Porsche podium, but it would be the first Porsche win. And fittingly coming whenever we have transitioned to the GT3 part of this season. For those of you new tuning in, this is a manufacturer spec series, or just a manufacturer cup essentially, where all of the drivers are on teams according to the manufacturer that they are driving for. We just got done with 3 rounds of GT4, and we have now transitioned over to 3 rounds of GT3. The final round of this race, or of this season, will be a 1-hour endurance race, or I believe it's a 1 hour, maybe a 1 hour or a 90-minute endurance race, one of the two, with the top 10 in the individual championship standings racing in GT3 cars for that championship, kind of in a winner takes all at the end. Not really, but you kind of get what I'm hinting at there. But there would still be points scoring for the manufacturer teams at the end of the season as well. As of right now, Mercedes are in the lead, but they have had a very poor night tonight. The conditions not favoring the Mercedes car whatsoever, as we have had pouring rain the entire duration of this race. One of the reasons why the field is so far spread out is we have had a lot of spins, a lot of incidents. The track was flooded for a while. Now the rain has finally started to calm down a bit, and we can actually see a bit of tarmac from the displacement of the moisture. Now things have calmed down. The deltas between the drivers have grown a bit. Not too many battles for position on track. It should just be a cruise here to the end. And I believe those who have survived thus far in the positions that they are in do deserve it. as it has been just very, very unfavorable conditions for the entirety of this race. As the Mustang of Miller allows the Aston Martin of Mikey to go on by in P2. Mikey does hold the fastest lap in that Aston Martin Vantage GT3. We'll see if we have any gaps that start to develop as there are some maybe some last minute moves for position. But this race really does seem to be winding down now. Everything has calmed down with the weather. When we had a lot of rain and a very wet track, the stakes were high, the tensions were high, the chaos was high. And boy, was there chaos. It's going to be a lot of people re-watching the broadcast of this one, or at least the first half of the broadcast. And there will be those drivers that would like to completely forget this round ever happened. There are drop rounds, so this one will likely be a drop round for many teams and drivers. Like I said, there will be championship implications. A bit of a battle here starting to develop between Franklin and Fernandez for P11 overall. Franklin with overall smooth runnings. Fernandez, a quick driver in the BMW, but has just had a lot of issues. Just trying to keep the car contained and on the track, as many drivers through all skill levels, both our seasoned champions, as no, from P6, the number 99, Porsche of Wagner, with only 5 minutes left in the race, goes around at the Ford curve and is now side by side with the McLaren of Horner. Wagner ultimately gets it, but goes too deep into the hairpin. It is now going to concede that position back and not going to lose out too terribly on the points there for that position, but did not want to lose those points, as Porsche currently P2 in the championship, in the team standings for the championship, with McLaren right behind. While McLaren is not scoring better, they want to try and take this opportunity to build more of a buffer between themselves and the competing team. And likely, with this finish tonight, drop rounds do need to be calculated into that. They will be when the standings are uploaded. But Porsche may find themselves a lot closer to the lead, or in the lead, as Young into the pit lane with damage. That's not going to help the Mercedes team at all. It's going to lose them even more points. Without one of their star drivers, the Mercedes team, and while they did take pole, issues found their current top driver on the grid of Vasquez, and did not have the teammate to really help try and defend that lead in the adverse conditions. A lot of understeer from the Mercedes early on, causing some issues. And overall, Breakfast, the only driver of the Mercedes team that was consistently running at the front of the field for the duration of the race, unfortunately had some contact with, I believe, the BMW of Fernandez, just to do with the wet conditions. The 18 of Bahana into the pit lane as well. But this is going to start the final lap of the race as Douglas comes out of the final corner. And there is one lap to go. Any positions that you would like to make up, you need to do so now or forever hold your peace. Vasquez on the final lap, or second to final lap, takes the fastest lap away from Mikey, at least showing that he has the pace, and if there's going to be any time to take the fastest lap of the race, it would be now with the diminishing rain, as this track is, well, it's not dry whatsoever. It's as dry as it has been and as dry as it will ever get. What has happened? I believe Franklin had an off and has now dropped down positions behind Fernandez. And what has happened to Mikey? This is extremely unfortunate for the Aston Martin team. It's not going to damage their point scoring positions as long as Mikey is able to bring it together, and it may be a 3 abreast finish for the team as they are all there close, but it can't risk too much because Winter is right there behind. They do not need any issues on this last lap of the race. Do not want to sacrifice any points, as this is going to be as good of a finish as the team has had all season, as long as they are able to bring it home together and to not have any more drivers go off the track. Just need to be as safe as possible, conscious of the pressure from behind from Winter, who is right there. Need to negotiate the back markers as well as possible. Bird in a bit of a hairy position, but the McLaren of Caligari does eventually let him past. Coming into the final corner, and out of the final corner across the line is going to be Douglas, taking home the win, the first Porsche win of this season, of this championship. And we'll jump on board with the Aston Martins. Mikey and Wilson right there together, bring home the other 2 spots on the podium. Very good finish for the Aston Martin team today. They're at least going to go 2 abreast. They want to wait for Bird to get in there as well, but they can't really risk it, as Bird was being pressured by the Porsche of Winter immediately behind. But it's P2, 3, and 4 for the Aston Martin crew. The boys back at the factory will be very happy about that result. Horner will come across the line. P6, Wagner will bring home P7. 3 Porsches in the top 10. Very good point scoring for them as well. Breakfast, the top scoring Mercedes, brings home P8. Vasquez, P12. Norman, P13. Franklin, P14. Miller, P16. Caligari, P17. Trotman Grant, P18. Merkel, P19. Still waiting on Harvey to come home and bring P9. Drain looking to take home P20. Likely not going to be very happy about that position. One of the top drivers in TRC and one of the top drivers for McLaren as well. Harvey will bring home P9. Atwell P10, as we have had someone disconnect. I think it may have been Wagner in the 99. Not too happy about that result, I don't think. Atwell across the line. Fernandez wants to bring home, I believe, what will be P11. I believe that should be P11. Very good podium, Wilson. It was a great one. You tried to give it back a couple times, but you were able to bring it home. Get on the podium for the boys. Bahena in the Mustang will be our last driver across the line to bring an end to this race. Going for the short route to the start-finish line. That will bring an end to tonight's coverage. It is Douglas taking home the win, with Mikey in P2 and Wilson in P3. Douglas, Mikey, Wilson, Bird, Winter, Horner, Wagner, Breakfast, Harvey, Atwell. That is your top 10 with Vasquez taking home the fastest lap in P12. Fernandez, P11, Vasquez, P12, Norman, P13, Franklin, P14. Granados, Miller, Caligari, Trotman, Grant, Merkel, Drain, Young, Bahena, Eggy, Mock, Craters, Greathouse, and Boiling. That's your results for round 4 of the TRC Brands Baddies Championship Series. Thank you all for tuning in. If you would like to support the streams, I would greatly appreciate it if you would hit that follow button. Same thing with the YouTube channel. If you would subscribe to the YouTube channel, we are about to hit 110 subscribers over there. And if you would like to support me, you can use a Twitch Prime subscription or just a regular Twitch subscription. Don't go anywhere. We will be rating someone real quick. And we will be ending tonight's coverage. We'll raid Nelks TV. Why not? Tuning in, and I will see you all next week.